participants. So can you guys, you can unmute yourself and tell me, I see the people that are online. Can you guys just tell me who else is here that I can't see your picture? Or just send me something in the chat box just with your name. If you don't want to speak out loud, that's okay. Just so I know who's here.
Hi there. I don't know if y'all can hear me. This is Valerie, and I don't know how to do too much on this computer.
Okay, Valerie. Do you see, well, you're here with us, so that's good, and I can hear you.
Yes.
Do you see like a little camera icon anywhere on your screen? If you just click on it, the video should pop up.
Oh, I just see stop video. Chat, share screen.
Yeah, you're looking at the top. And
Oh,
there's no
Kathy, on those pictures, on the pictures of us, at the
Mhm.
very bottom, I see a little arrow, and I can scroll down, and it
Yes.
shows.
So
Okay.
I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4 of us. 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's one that I'm missing. Yeah, I'm gonna get all of you guys because I don't need to see my own PowerPoint.
And Kathy, could you possibly start the recording over so we won't be putting my email address?
You know what? I'll have Kirk do that. He has to,
Okay.
he can edit it. Yeah, and
Okay.
he can do
Thank
that
you.
for us. Yes, good call. So I'll talk to Kirk. Good idea. Otherwise, it'll be out there for everyone to see. Well, hello, everybody. I'm so honored to be with you all, and it's nice to meet you. And I think we're going to have hopefully a time together that you guys will feel is more than worth your time your time away from your family and friends and your life. This is a really personal experience. And I'm really praying and hoping that you guys will allow whatever needs to happen. And that will make more sense later as we kind of go through the material. But I just wanted to kind of do a little introduction and tell you a little about who I am. And then I want to learn about you guys. I want to know like sort of why you've signed up and just maybe think that this class resonated with you and kind of know what maybe some of your hopes are and what your goals are for doing some grief work. And then we'll go a little bit into the material and then I'll kind of just do a little wrap up. So we're going to meet for the next 2 weeks, including we'll do tonight, and then we'll do 2 more weeks on Wednesday, same time. And then we're going to be off for 2 weeks, just so you can put it on your calendar, because I'm going to be traveling. I'm out of town for 2 weeks. And before I agreed to teach, Kirk was gracious enough to tell me it was okay to do that. Otherwise, I wasn't going to be able to do this semester. So it worked out pretty good. So, but just so you guys can, know for your schedules, we'll be off for 2 weeks, and I'll tell you ahead of time. And then we'll come back together and finish up. So let me just get into this, and then I want to find out more about you guys, where you're from, and a little bit more about why you're here. So I'm Kathy Holguin. I'm licensed in California. My PowerPoint is not updated. I'm now living in Texas.
Yay! Yay!
I've come to God's country. So no, actually, it just became more and more unbearable for us in California, especially if you're a Christian and have a different value system and whatnot. And so we've been really feeling led to move out of California. And actually, we were heading to Washington. And I wanted to start a grief recovery center up there. And then God just kind of changed our hearts and led us to Texas. Our grandkids are here. And we're related to Kirk and Susan, if you guys know them. Yay! You found the camera.
Yes, I had it covered up at the top. There's a little eye.
Nice to meet you. So if you guys know Kirk and Susan Hayes, our daughter, my stepdaughter, is married to their son, Ryan. So that's the connection. So we share 3 little grandkids together, and we actually moved to Lubbock where they live, and it's been pretty cool. I have a private practice still in California, and so I travel back and forth quite a bit, at least once a month, and see private clients there. And then I do a lot of telework as well. And I'm licensed in Texas now too. So I can, I have a practice here that I'm sort of getting off the ground a little bit at a time. And I specialize in trauma and grief and loss. I do a lot of betrayal trauma, and then anxiety and depression. I work with little kids, and I work with couples and families and individuals. So kind of like the whole spectrum. And I love it. I just feel like this is something God called me to do when I was in junior high school. I knew I wanted to be a therapist. It's kind of strange, but it took me 13 years to get licensed. I was a single parent for most of that time. So I was juggling 5 kids and then a school schedule. And yeah, it's pretty crazy. Luckily, my mom and dad lived close and had a lot of really close friends that helped me. And yeah, so doing what I feel called to do. And I kind of feel like in the world of mental health, especially with people who are struggling with anxiety, depression, a lot of other things, the rootedness most often than not is an unresolved grief issue or loss issue. And it's amazing how when you start doing grief and loss work, how other stuff sort of comes to the surface, and you find out like there's just some stuff that a lot of times we haven't really taken the time, because a lot of us haven't had the luxury of time to focus on some of our own personal stuff in terms of loss. And so that's why I was sharing with you, this experience is very, very personal. And I'm going to stop the recording when we get into more personal stuff as our weeks go on, because I don't want your personal stuff to be, you know, like, and Kirk helps me edit as well, because I don't want stuff like given to the whole world, just out of respect for your privacy. So let's see, what else? I think that's about it. I have 5 kids. I had twins. So when my twins were born, I had a 2-year-old, a 6-year-old, and an 8-year-old. So it was crazy. It was crazy. I had people doing my laundry, people helping me with transportation. It was crazy. And then I became a single parent when my twins were in 2nd grade. And you'll learn more about me. This is kind of cool for me because as a therapist, obviously, I don't tell you any personal information about me because it's not about me. But in this venue, I talk a lot about like what my own stuff is in terms of my own loss, so that you guys have the opportunity to kind of know a little bit more about me and also how the grief and loss process works. So it's kind of nice because I'm more in a teaching capacity, so I can kind of help in ways that I couldn't help if I was just, your therapist kind of thing. So anyway, so that's me. If you have any questions, I'm an open book. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I want to learn about you guys. So whoever wants to jump in first, if you don't want to talk, that's totally okay. I encourage you to, because I would love for you to be involved in this process. But if you don't want to, that's okay too. I don't want to trigger anybody and make them feel uncomfortable. So whoever would like to start, and Brenda, you're my seasoned, participant. So I'm going to call on you, but everybody else can just jump in when they want.
All right. I'm Brenda and I'm married to Kent. We just had our 45th wedding anniversary and 2 sons. They're both married and both have 2 children. And so they span from 20 years old to 13. And so it's really special. We've always lived up here in the panhandle of Texas. And I've had a lot of grief in my life. There's been a lot of deaths that were unexpected, and then other losses in relationships, I guess you'd say. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and so Brenda was with us last time. Brenda, can you talk a little bit about what you're just to, whatever you'd like to share, but
Okay.
that maybe like what was helpful to you and any encouraging words to other people?
Yeah, the thing that helped me so much was talking about recovery and completion of the grief. That really amazed me at the approach this takes. And so I just a few months before that class started, like this earlier in the spring, my brother had passed away. And so that was fresh. And my mother-in-law, who we were caregivers for, had just passed away also. And then another man that was like a father to my husband had passed away. So we just had a lot recently. And so I started to focus on my brother because after we did one of the exercises, that's who I started on. But as I talked, Kathy noticed that I mentioned my mother. And she said, you might consider looking at that loss. And so I prayed about it, and that's what I did. So anyway, I really, really, really love Kathy.
Oh,
I think she really is spot on with stuff and such an amazing leader for this. And she, no matter whatever you say, she affirms you and then brings it around to what's in the book that'll help us. So yeah, I loved it.
good, did some great work. Awesome. I'm so glad you're back. And that
Thank
is the
you.
cool thing about this program, you guys, is that what I'm going to teach you is a sort of a formula. It's, for lack of a better term, to teach you how to take an individual loss as you identify them, and then you can apply this strategy or formula, this program, to each individual situation where there was loss. And you'll know what your losses are as we go through this program. I'll teach you. We have ways of identifying those things, so you can actually use this stuff over and over and over again as you're able to use your emotional energy to focus on each individual loss. So it's not unusual for people to be a part of this class and learn how to do this, and then apply it to different situations and different losses. So it's very appropriate to do this again. So thank you, Brenda. Okay, who wants to go next? Just jump in.
You'll learn that I'm an extrovert, so I'll always jump in.
Oh, good.
And so my husband died with Alzheimer's in April of 2021. And so, and it was just horrific. Horrific. And I, last when you offered it in the spring, I just thought, I know I have to deal with this and how he died, but man, I just couldn't go there. And it seems like it's, because I've read and done a lot of stuff since then, so it's not so bad, but I know that I still have to deal with that. And then, like you said in the book and in class, you identify, so much more, and so one of the things it would help if you would address why, like, I'm 79 and I'm a grown up and I'm a faithful Christian and I do good things and whatever. Why can't I? It seems like if I'm a big girl, I should be able to handle this. But then, one of the things that really strikes me from the book, it says we were not taught correct skills to complete the pain caused by memories. That, in my case, I don't feel like I was taught any emotional skills. That I just grew up, you got a spanking, and if you cried because you got a spanking, you got another whipping, So it was like, put on your big girl clothes and But anyway, that's me. And I have, so I'm in Katy. I go to Memorial Church of Christ, and I have 2 children. And then in the death of my husband, I also have 3 stepchildren. But we were married 39 years. My first husband died when I was 33. And so
Mm. Wow.
he had polio as a child. So, so my 2 children are from that first marriage.
Mhm. Wow. Okay. There's a lot there, right? Yeah, I was going to ask how long you guys were married. How long did he suffer with the Alzheimer's before you?
Oh, the last year was pretty horrific, and then it had memory issues for like 10 years, but not any particular thing, but it was all wearing, and I noted one time at the doctor's office, he had on the top of my chart, caregiving syndrome, but you just really don't know how tired you are.
Yes.
I was, you know, happy to take care of him, but you can't take care of somebody 24 hours a day or keep up with them. So,
Well, and my guess is the caregiving syndrome started when you lost your first husband, right?
well, I'm a one of those persons. If you divide them up, the giver or the taker,
Mhm.
pretty much on the giver end. So,
Well, you had 2 children and you lost your first husband, right? So
right.
you were caregiving as, we don't think of being a mom as being caregiving, but it's the ultimate caregiving. So yeah, you've been caregiving a long, long time.
And then I
Wow.
certainly never addressed the trauma that my children may or may not have had,
Right. Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and the cool thing about this, Nancy, is you'll be able to kind of have a different sort of lens, so
mhm,
you can help them and you can help others start to kind of open their perspective in terms of how they think about the events that's happened in their life, right? You don't want to become their therapist, obviously, but you have more of an in-depth understanding. um, and like you say, like I think so many of our parents just, they couldn't give us what they never had, and all that
right,
they had was, you know what, you just buck up and you
mhm,
pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Emotions are an inconvenience at best, and we don't need those things. Right, we have to get on with life. And so I think learning, giving yourself some emotional space so that you know um we can really understand, not only with our heads but with our hearts, more about who we are. My favorite scripture is in Ephesians 3, sort of 16 and on, that says, my prayer for you is that you'll not only know with your head the height, depth, and breadth of the love of God, but that you'll experience it for yourself. It's in the experience that we become, I think, more well-rounded and healthier emotionally, when we experience all the different parts of who we are. And a lot of us were never taught that all those other emotional parts of us mattered, much less how to express them and give ourselves permission to feel them. So
and like you said, that this was the first time I've had time to think about myself, or just be by myself. So I like it.
yes, yes. Oh, I'm excited for you. Okay. Well, thank you, Nancy, for being here. Okay, who else?
My name is Nanette Kettler. I've been married to Paul for almost 46 years, and we've got 2 kids and 2 grandkids. We've spent a lot of time with the grandkids helping my daughter. Something unique about me. Wow. I'm a CPA. I always worked in industry, but I worked in IT. I didn't work on the accounting side. It was kind of an interesting little route, but enjoyed it. In 2015, though, we both retired to do full-time caregiving for 3 parents. We had been taking care of my husband's mother since 2008 when Hurricane Ike hit. Very unexpected. And I was taking care of my parents also, but slowly, little pieces at a time, if that makes sense. Um, yeah. And so we took care of my mother-in-law from 2008 to 2021. She had Alzheimer's. My mom had a really bad year, 2017, and in 2018 she passed. In 2018, also my dad, I'll just say, went berserk. He had PTSD, or has PTSD and Alzheimer's. That's been a long siege. And then my daughter found out the same year that her husband was unfaithful. And so we've had divorce and all sorts of things to deal with from that. My dad became violent when he was staying with us, and I had to get guardianship, and this was during COVID, which was not easy. So yeah, so for all those reasons, that's why I'm here. Anyhow, Dad is still with us, and the other ones aren't. And we're still dealing with some of the effects of our daughter's divorce. Yeah, I guess that's about it.
Wow. Wow. So so you're retired and you full-time caregive your dad then.
He is in a facility.
Okay.
After he had hit me, we needed to get him somewhere else.
Right.
So
Yeah, yeah, just to stay safe. I get it. Yeah.
yeah, and he
And
kept running away. So
yeah,
yeah, he needed to be in a facility, in a locked facility.
okay. Good for you. And have you ever been able to process your disappointment about your daughter's marriage and loss of that marriage?
My daughter is a LPC, a licensed professional counselor.
Okay.
So she suggested, oh goodness, probably 2017, that I needed to get
Yeah.
a therapist. And so I've actually been seeing the therapist that my dad was dealing with at the VA.
Okay.
Because I guess he has been my main stumbling block, dealing with a lot of that. And my dad is very unique, and this therapist knew him very well. So it was easier to step in.
Got
So
it. Great. Oh, that's great. Um, would you say that with your therapist, you've been able to process your feelings about your dad in terms of kind of from a grief perspective, or more from a utilitarian, like how do we deal with, the day to day?
a lot of the utilitarian,
Okay.
because there's been so many incidents to deal with,
Yes. Right. Yeah.
and so many situations to deal with. It kind of blows my mind thinking about it, actually.
Okay.
So
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Um, so I think the thing that I would just highlight is that um, sometimes when we're very cognitive and really intelligent people, um, process things cognitively very naturally, right? Like it's easy to kind of try to put things in a logical perspective and kind of a how to like move forward kind of thought process. This process, and I'm not going to pick on you, Nanette. I promise, but I'm going to challenge you to move from that cognitive, comfortable spot that you use that's helpful to you into a place where emotionally you can start to check in with yourself and start to become more familiar with that emotional part of you in terms of the loss. And this program will help you do that just naturally. So when it naturally starts to happen and some emotion kind of starts to rise to the surface, I want you to like feel comfortable enough with it as we kind of go through week to week. And so I'm really glad you have a therapist that you can help, that will help with that, right? Because moving from our head to our heart and that emotional piece of us can be a challenge and very, very scary. I'm very much like, so when you tell me, oh yeah, I was a CPA, all these like light bulbs are going on in my head, like, because it's a different part of the brain that is your strength, right? And you rely on that, right? God gave that to you for a reason. So that's not a bad thing. What I want to do is help enlarge it, right? I want to help expand the experience you have with yourself. And so that can involve some emotional stuff too. And it might feel uncomfortable, but I call it, sometimes grief is the best gift because you get the gift of yourself. And as you process grief, you will experience different types of emotions. And that is really giving you back parts of yourself. I know like a lot of people are like, oh, she talks about emotions so much. But I always tell people, you know what? God describes himself as the most powerful emotion, right? Which is what?
Love.
Exactly. Right. He tells us, I am love. I am the essence of love. And I have a really good book that I recommend. It's called Visions of Heaven and Hell by John Bunyan. If you haven't read it, it is incredible. It's a little tiny book. It's not very big at all, but it was written by John Bunyan, who wrote Pilgrim's Progress. And some of you know his story. This book was written in the 1800s, basically. And the book is his experience with the Lord of what heaven is. And the book kind of explains his process and how he got there. But he says, I'm going to try to explain to you what I experienced in heaven as God showed him heaven. And he says, I cannot explain what it feels like to be perfectly loved. Because on earth, we can't experience that feeling. But to be in a place where you feel perfectly loved is something that's indescribable. And so that's why I love Ephesians 3:16, because it talks about perfect love. And I think that if we can begin to love ourselves and all of the parts of ourselves that are God-given, our anger, our mistrust, our fear, right? All of those things that we've been told, those things aren't important, or you don't need to pay attention to that, right? If we begin to embrace some of those feelings that maybe we haven't had permission to really engage with ourselves, we get the gift of ourselves. We do. We get to experience ourselves differently. And so that's my prayer for you. And if you feel challenged, that's a good thing. And it's okay to feel a little scared. I always tell people the first time I walked into my own therapist's office, by the way, never hire a therapist that's never done their own work, by the way, make sure they've done their own work. But I felt like I had been literally like kicked in the gut. That's how afraid, that's how scared I was of anything having to do with emotions. And so if you're feeling a little nervous today, that's okay, right? That's not a problem. And I want to encourage you to kind of move toward that feeling instead of away from it. But we'll talk more about that. Okay. Thank you so much, Nanette, for sharing. Thank you for being here. Okay.
Thank
Who
you.
else?
Okay,
Oh,
my
I'll
name,
go ahead.
somebody else on?
I
My
can't
name, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead, Suzanne.
Suzanne Garcia. I don't know why my picture never comes out on here. I don't know how to do it.
Do
Same
you
thing.
do you have like anything covering your camera?
No, there's nothing covering it, but even in Kirk's classes, I never can
Oh.
see. So that's fine with me.
Okay. Go for it.
My name is Suzanne Garcia. I live in Austin with our youngest son. My husband Pedro and I have been married for 49 years. We've lived in Houston during all those years except the last 2. We moved out here to Austin to help our son and daughter-in-law with 3 children and homeschool. I've had a lot of pain, a lot of sorrow in my life. It goes way back to my childhood. I've had a little bit of group therapy, but not much. And the only thing I can think of that might be a little bit unique about me is that I am a recent liver transplant patient, and I give God the glory for allowing me to get a donor liver, and I pray for the donor family.
Awesome. Well, thank you,
Hey.
Suzanne.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being here. We'll see if we can figure out your, I'm not technologically that savvy, but
So I guess I could get my son to help me.
there we go. Yeah, anybody
he'll-
8 years old or above could help us probably.
Oh yeah, well he's an adult. He's grown and he knows. So I'll get him to help me.
Okay, that would be great. Okay, who's next?
Hi, my name is Charlotte,
Hi, Charlotte.
and I was divorced about 20 years ago, and I feel like I've recovered, but I wanted to join this class to see if I could learn something or recover more. I'm not sure of it. I just wanted to learn about the grief because 20 years ago, I felt like I couldn't cope. Right now, I feel like I'm thriving, but I still want to meet, like-minded people and learn something new.
Mm-hmm. Okay, where do you live, Charlotte?
I live in Missouri City, Texas.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I can resonate with that, Charlotte. That's my that was my grief. I mean, there have been others as well, for sure. But the thing that threw me into even being a therapist was the loss of my marriage. So so I feel you. Yeah. And it can take so long. It's amazing. It's been like for you, like you kind of, it's been like 20 some years, remarried, I have 3 stepkids and my own 5. I mean, but so many things I still every once in a while, usually for me, it comes that some of the unresolved stuff comes up in dreams. Like I'll have dreams about something that happened like 20 years ago. Yeah. So it's interesting how our kind of how that psychological part of us protects us and gives us stuff to handle when we can handle it, and shows us things. And so, yeah, so I resonate with that for sure.
I think the main thing with me, and I was going to make a comment. I think for me, since the divorce, I have no desire to remarry. And so I've had friends tell me, is there a problem? Do I feel like there's something holding me back from getting remarried? And so maybe that's also part of the reason I joined the class.
Okay, that's good to know, right? Because the thing that is interesting about grief is that one thing can happen and we think that like our inability maybe, or not inability, lack of desire maybe to move forward or to go there again is related to that incident, right? And usually something happens way early in our life and we sort of replicate the same dynamic throughout our whole life. And we don't understand that it isn't just this incident. It's probably something linked to much earlier in your life. And so this process really, I think, kind of helps with that understanding that, oh, maybe I'm not healing from the thing that really, really original was the original wound. And so until we get to the rootedness of where we're wounded, it is hard to move forward. And that's why I love grief work so much, is because it's not only just like dealing with the loss in the immediate, but we get a chance to take a look at what's happening like throughout our whole lives. And and again, you get the gift of yourself, right? Because you get to reclaim some of that. So awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being with us. Okay, who's
Thank you.
next?
Okay, my name is Latrey. I am originally from Oakland, California, so I'm a native.
Ah,
I'm a transplant. I
okay,
came here.
there.
I came here in 2018, 2019, and my prayer to get here was because I'm coming from a state where I've been all my life, and my prayer was I want to come to a place where I know no one, so I can totally depend on God.
Really?
And why did I pray that prayer? Um, because he has showed me how to depend on him and what I had to do to depend on him. And so I had to exchange some things in life that was holding me back from a true relationship with Christ. And so once I uncovered the last 20 years of my life, I was able to get down to the root of where it all came from. And just last year, I noticed that I was uh, reacting in a way that was not healthy, and I had not seen this pattern before. And so I reached out to a therapist, and this wonderful therapist, she got me through. I didn't know that I was in fight or flight mode for 30 plus years. I did not know that I I had PTSD. I did not know. I knew I had anxiety. I didn't know I had severe anxiety and depression. And just coming through that part of therapy was breathtaking because it allowed me to tap into emotions that I had never ever tapped into. And so now that I have been exposed to those emotions, and I completed her part of therapy. Now I have to use the tools that she has given me, and this is one of the tools that she recommended. Always stay connected with things that you're unfamiliar with, and you need to get familiarize yourself with. And grief is one thing that I have issues with. And grief is a process that we all have to go through, and we have a choice in how we deal with it. You can either suppress it, or you can meet it right head on. And I'm choosing to meet it head on because I have suppressed it for so many years. And when you suppress things, it allows Satan to take root, and he is controlling your life. And so, because you don't want to give up something, and God is saying, I need you to give it up so I can give you what I have, and His love, His peace, His joy. His kindness, all those things are characteristics of Christ. I want, and so when I'm feeling those things, where am I? I check myself. And so this is one of the classes that I'm deciding to take. I have decided to take, and then also I am becoming a life coach or a Christian counselor. And this is one of the things that I know I'm going to have to deal with. And I just want to be able to uh, heal myself, because I can't teach others if I haven't done the work myself. And so this is probably a little bit more in depth. And so this is why I'm here.
Awesome. Isn't that, oh, that just freaks me out because, Trey, because when I was like early high school, freshman, sophomore year, I wanted to go with Taking Christ to the Millions on the mission field. This was my direction. And the reason is because I wanted to go somewhere where I had to fully depend on the supernatural power of God to sustain me. So it's kind of a very similar thing to go somewhere where you don't know anybody for the purpose of just relying on him. Isn't that's amazing? Like,
It's a beautiful but scary thing, but if
it's
you
terrifying.
allow him to if you allow him to do the work, he will get you through it. And so, but you have to be vulnerable and allow others to pour into you, the people that he have sent, and you'll know who he has sent by
Yeah.
the things that you have prayed. And so I'm learning that.
That's cool. So I'm curious. You
Okay.
said you have issues with grief.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what your concerns are?
My concern is the processing of the grief.
And how it might trigger your PTSD?
It can definitely trigger, and I can go into and it's very subtle on how the mood that I can go into, because I've done it for so many years. It's just it's comfortable, and when I see myself in that pattern, I've noticed I will start to let me get back in the bed, and that's not what I need to do. I need to get out of the bed.
Yes.
I need to do the opposite of what I'm doing, and so it's hard. It's very tricky, and I I'm learning not to give myself days in processing. It takes 2 or 3 days. If I'm processing it too long, I need to really talk to someone so I can get it out. It should only take me maybe 1 to 2 days. That's my max. And so if I feel, if I feel like it's getting that, I call one of my friends. Can you help me process this? Talk me through this. That type of thing. And so I'm very talkative. I journal all the time. So my my book is probably my best friend that get all the things that's in my head that I'm processing out on paper. And once it's on paper, I don't pick it back up. And or if I do pick it back up, it's not the whole thing. And it's just pieces of it. And I go
Okay.
from there.
And so, okay, awesome. So you have support.
Yes.
I'm so glad you brought this up because many of us have PTSD and we don't even realize it, right? You've done work on it, so you know exactly what triggers you and how it manifests, right? Those of us
Yep.
who aren't quite as aware of what that looks like for us, it can happen. So I'm just kind of sharing that globally because PTSD can manifest differently. We use PTSD like a little more commonly. The diagnosis for PTSD is you have to feel like you're going to be like murdered, like killed. I mean, it has to be the point where you feel like your life is in danger or being threatened immediately. But PTSD symptoms can trigger depression. It can trigger anxiety. That can look more like just you're being irritable, or like Latreille was saying, like you don't want to get out of bed, right? So I'm going to check in with you guys every week to see sort of how you're doing, because having a support system in place, someone you can talk to, is really helpful. And that's why it's helpful for me to know if you have a PTSD diagnosis. That's something I need to know, because I don't want to trigger you and have you re-experience trauma, right? Can I ask you, Latreille, did you do any EMDR for your trauma?
I believe so. I'm not quite sure.
eye movements back and forth as you're working through your trauma?
She did. She did it very subtle.
You did. Okay,
She was
great.
very
Somebody
subtle.
had a great therapist. Okay, that's very helpful because hopefully that really like helped calm down some of that reactivity. So yeah. Okay, good. So do you have access to your therapist if you need her?
Yeah, you know what? I still do. I can reach out to her at any point. I just reached out her to her maybe a few weeks ago, and I was telling her I was having a little time a hard time processing something, and we talked for like 30 minutes, and I was okay, and I
Good.
moved on from there. But
Right.
yeah.
Because if anything comes up through this process for you,
Mhm.
if you, even if you went, like you said, you just go to see her once or twice and she does some EMDR surrounding whatever it is that came up for you,
Mhm.
that will take care of it, right?
Mhm.
So that's awesome. Good.
Thank
Yay,
you.
that's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. I'm so glad you're here.
You're
That's-
welcome.
Okay, who's next? I only have a couple people left.
I can't get on chat.
Oh, okay. Do you want to just share with us a little bit? Or if not, that's okay, Valerie. Hello?
Hello,
Hold on just a second. Are you mom?
I'm Valerie.
There you go. Go ahead, Valerie.
You can hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, that's amazing. I don't know how to turn myself off now. I'm sort of computer illiterate. I used to be pretty good at it. I have lost my husband and my parents. I have 4 children. I'm living in an apartment. I wasn't able to live at home due to an accident. I have traumatic brain injury. And so I forget things very, very easily. And so I have anxiety, and it just makes it a little bit harder because now I have found the words, that I have lost. But not a lot of people to talk to. I live in an apartment now alone,
Okay.
and I have a dog. He is my buddy. But yeah, I want to work through this and be pretty dependent.
Uh,
And I
okay.
my children are my 3 girls are 40 and above. And then I have a son who is he's in trouble a lot. Um, so they're busy,
Uh-huh.
their lives.
Do they live nearby?
Yes, they don't live too far.
Okay. What's your dog's name?
Buddy. Buddy. He is my buddy.
What kind of dog is he?
He's a wild hair terrier. Very, very protective. He's
Uh-huh.
everything.
Oh. Okay. How long have you had the TBI, Valerie?
I've had it since 2016. And therefore, until 2018, I really couldn't remember hardly anything. I learned how to words and start recognizing faces and stuff.
Wow. Mhm. So so some of that stuff just came back you were you doing physical therapy to help with that or occupational therapy to help with that?
Off and on, and I've seen a neurologist, and unfortunately, I haven't found too many good ones in Houston that get in depth. And so I have one. I'm supposed to have my results September the 20th, and it's been like a 6-month process.
Yeah. Okay.
Trying to get through that, but
Okay.
I still grieve over my husband and not having someone around.
Yeah. Yeah. How long were you married?
35 years. But he passed in 2004, so it's been a very long time.
Does it feel to you like since it's been a long time, you should be over grieving him?
I feel like he should always be a part of me. I don't I don't desire to be with any other men, and I'm not comparing them or anything like that. Um, I forgot the question.
Okay, no, yeah. Well, sometimes we feel like, oh, it's been such a long time, I should be quite over it, right? And it's not the way it works. So, yeah, that's why I was curious.
Yeah, I still feel alone without him. He was
Yes,
a part of life.
yeah. That's a long time to be together, 35 years. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how, we start our lives and we think it's going to go a certain way, and our lives take on a certain path. And then, after 35 years, you lose this person that you've been with for that long, right? And then your children grow and they leave home, right? And then for you, you lost something in terms of your health, right? And it's sort of like, wait a second, like, why did this happen? Where did it all go? Right?
Yes, I don't say why.
Mhm.
I feel like everything is God's purpose, and it seems positive to some people, like, well, she's out there, walking her dog or whatever. But it's a very lonely time.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Feel
Well,
like I have
hopefully,
some
being-
tools here, and
and being together once a week, hopefully will help with that as well. What other connection do you have? Do you have a good church? Do you have other friends? Tell me
I
a
go
little.
to Kirk's church. There in Lake City. Of course, he's not there now. And I have a sister that goes there. And wow,
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you. I'm glad you're here with us, Valerie.
I am too.
Yeah.
And I
Welcome.
can you guys, and
Yeah. Okay. Is it Liliana?
Hi,
Hi.
yes,
You changed
yes.
it from mom.
I didn't know. I'm sorry. It was labeled like that. Sorry. Yes, my name's Liliana. Hi.
Beautiful.
Thank you. I'm joining in from Rosenberg, and I recently lost my mom like about a month ago. And so the title of this class kind of spoke to me, and that's why I joined. I one thing about me, I speak Spanish, and well, I am hoping to um let God speak to me through this class, and I just hope to um process this grief that I didn't know I was going through. So
Yeah. Yeah. You were close to your mom?
very.
Yes. Okay. All right. And what kind of tell me about what kind of support do you have?
Well, my family, my kids, my husband, yes. But he also lost his mom this year.
Oh.
So it's been a rough year for us.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's why it spoke to me. So
Yeah.
um yeah, understanding more about processing emotions and everything. So
Yeah. Those
that's
emotions
why
are
I'm here.
pretty raw for you. It looks like they're
Yes.
very at the surface.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
I'm glad you're here. I'm really glad you're here. And I think this will help it's a very fresh, recent loss. And thank you for allowing us to walk through this with you.
It is. Thank you.
It is a privilege. It really is. And I take it very seriously
Thank you so much.
and honor that pain, right? Okay, is there
Thank
anything
you.
else? Did I miss anybody? Go ahead and speak up, because I know sometimes I have people that are not on camera. I don't want to miss anyone. No? Okay, a lot of times people will check in and listen later. So a lot of times we have more people than are here. So, but I'm glad you guys are here. All right. Well, thank you. Kind of as I alluded to, it's a privilege to walk with each other through our losses and our pain. And even just hearing what's going on for you is something that I really treasure. And I think that's one thing about doing grief work, is that we all come to the table with our own hurts, and the playing field is level, right? We all have losses and pain, and nobody's pain is greater than somebody else's, because it's all very unique to each person in each situation. And even though we're going to be processing things that are different in terms of subject matter, it's pain nonetheless, right? And so we can walk with each other and appreciate each other. So I just wanted to share just a little bit about sort of the structure, and I'll kind of highlight a few things that are sort of on my screen here. Just on an administrative note, I just wanted to encourage you guys to try to be here like a little before 7. If you want to chat, put anything in the chat box. I'll try to read it as we're going through the class, but I pretty much focus on what's going on with you guys, so I'm not looking at other screens and things. I do take notes, but that's just because I'm so used to doing it. I probably don't even need to in this format, but I do anyway. So this class is it's a confidential subject matter, but just be aware that we are recording it. Excuse me. And so if there is sensitive information and you want me to stop the recording, I'm happy to do that. So just let me know that, okay? And then our class is experiential, which means that even though I'm the one that's leading it, you guys really are the subject matter of this class. I have material and I have structure, but really your process is first and foremost the most important thing. So I want you guys to jump in and ask questions as much as you need to or want to, right? Because this is about you. It really is. And I'm going to email homework. I hate that word because it's like brings up PTSD of long ago. But I do have, it's like, it helps you guys process stuff. It's really mostly to be an aid for you. But I'll email any reading assignments and homework worksheets like usually right after we're done with class. I'll try to do it like the next day, so you have a week to do it. If you don't get it, just email me and let me know. Okay. And I did email you guys the book, and it sounds like some of you were already able to get it. It's awesome and worth every bit of the $10 that you will pay for it on Amazon. So but you definitely will need the book for the class. Otherwise, stuff isn't going to probably make as much sense to you. My goal for you guys in this class is that you learn how to work this grief recovery program through your own experience, right? That's why we identify what some of your losses are. And in that process, then you'll have the ability to help others. And so whether it's an informal situation or informal, this material is taken from the Grief Recovery Method, which is a certification that people can get It's a little pricey. A lot of times nurses or doctors or therapists will get certified. And then they even can build their own little business. So if you're thinking about doing coaching or something like that, it's a good little platform for that. And I got certified just because as a therapist, so much of what happens in the room is related to grief. So I kind of bring a unique perspective to this material because I approach it from my training as a therapist, my experience as a therapist, my personal experience, and then the grief recovery method material. So I kind of bring, and as a Christian, obviously, that influences my world perspective, right? So this is kind of this is different than what you would get if you got certified through the grief recovery method. But I am licensed. I have paid for the curriculum to use it, and so they don't want you using their curriculum unless you are certified. So obviously, because they don't want their materials to be augmented in any way. So but that just kind of helps a little bit more of the background. But that's why we have the book, and then a lot of the protocols and the way we move forward in terms of curriculum is based in the grief recovery method format. Anyways, but the goal is to learn how to process your own grief so that you can help other people, and then obviously help yourself. We define grief in the grief recovery method as the loss, of a hope, a dream, or an expectation. And that's huge because some losses can be really big and some can be small, but they're all losses nonetheless. And as a therapist, I'm trained to listen to people and track what could be considered a loss and what's considered something that people have processed, and maybe stuff that, like, a lot of times people come in the room and they'll say, oh, I don't have any trauma in my background. And then I'll talk to them later and it's like, oh, I lost my sister 4 years ago, right? But they don't look at that as a traumatic loss, right? Or they had something happen to them that I know is definitely a loss or a traumatic event. But because we tend to minimize our pain so that we can get through it, we don't look at things as losses necessarily or traumas. So I'm more trained to help you guys understand maybe how those events affected you, and then how to process them so you can move beyond it. So, and so that's kind of why I put grief defined the inability to process a loss is really at the base of a lot of our hurt and disappointment. And as we learn to process those things as adults, it unlocks like a whole new world in terms of our ability to move forward. And that's kind of my hope for you guys. But basically, defining grief as a loss of a hope, a dream, or an expectation it kind of encompasses everything, right? So for me personally, I had to process the loss of the dad that I wished that I had. Okay. My dad was, I just lost him 2 years ago, but my dad was one of those dads who never said, honey, I love you, or, you're beautiful, or, right. He just wasn't that kind of man. He had his own limitations because of a lot of stuff he had gone through, which limited his ability to be what I would have hoped for. Right. So it was about my need to process the loss of a dream or even an expectation of what I thought I should have or wanted to have in a dad. Okay. So I use that as an example because that loss was different than me processing the loss of my marriage. Right. And so, so I'm just sharing that with you because I want to kind of give you guys a bigger perspective on how you look at what is considered a loss. And is it the loss of a hope or a dream or an expectation? Or is it the loss of a physical person in your life? Like some of you guys have shared, like a loss of a mom. That's a very succinct, identifiable, concrete loss, right? But there are other losses. And so I'm trying to help you understand that it can be more global, and think about loss as, what did I really hope for that I never had, or that I'll never have, right? Or a dream or an expectation. Okay, so I love their material, and that's how they define grief. Did you want to say something, Nancy? Were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just agreeing with everything. And
Can I
I
ask
I
a question?
never, even though I'd listened and read, that never dawned on me that I could actually hope for, or as a child, I would have hoped for different, because since you don't know any different,
Right.
Okay.
now I can see that I would have hoped for a better father, but I just thought I was to deal with the one I had. So,
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Um, can you hear me?
Yes, Suzanne,
yes.
go ahead. Uh-huh.
What book are you talking about? I mean, is there a book for this, or what's the title? I don't have any information at all.
Okay, Suzanne, did you get any of my emails?
Oh, I never got one email.
That's why. Okay, I will make sure you get it. It's called the Grief Recovery Method, and I will send you the email when we're done. Okay, so why don't you can you email me, because I don't want to give your email out to the whole world.
Mhm.
Can you send me your email? Do you have my email
Oh, I
address, or do you have
don't
Kirk's?
know about you either.
What's
I
that?
know your name, but I don't know anything else about you. I don't have your email address.
Okay. Can I give it to you? And
Yeah,
then you can
yes.
email me with yours, and I will
Right.
send you. Awesome. It's K for Catherine, and then my last name, Holguin, H is in Harry, O-L-G is in girl, U-I-N as in Nancy,
Right.
therapy,
Therapy
at Gmail.
at Gmail. No .com or .net.
At gmail.com.
.com.
Yeah.
Okay. And we buy this book on Amazon, or?
Yes. Yes. And I'll send you the name of the book and the link as well.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, I'm glad you did. Does anybody else need well, if you need anything, you have my email now, so just email me and I'll be happy to get it to you. Sound good?
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, sure. Okay. So this is we have a little bit of time here. So I want to just talk a little bit about my perspective toward grief. And I'll just share with you a little bit about, I told you I work with kids. And so my approach in therapy is more psychodynamic, which means that most of what we deal with as adults is, in terms of struggles, most of the time is rooted in early childhood experiences. And so when kids are little, right, think about yourself when you were really little, 4, 5, 6 years old, wherever your first memories are. And kids, when they're that little, they're very concrete, which means that they can't deal with abstract ideas or thoughts, because psychologically they're not equipped to do that yet. And so what happens is, if something traumatic or loss happens, or like they internalize a message like, my feelings aren't important. Okay, let's just take that for an example. Then whenever they have a strong feeling, anger or sadness or whatever, what do? They don't have the ability, because they're not abstract thinkers yet or processors. So any kind of strong feeling is overwhelming to them. And so if they have a really strong feeling, it's the parent's job, a healthy parent's job, to come alongside our kids and help them process what they feel. Meaning that little Johnny fell off his bike and he's 4 years old and he's crying, right? So it's our job to come alongside and hold him in that emotional space, create safety so that he knows his feelings are okay, and then help him find language for those feelings. So it's our job to basically, wow, that must have been so sad for you. I'm so sad, right? And you fell off your bike, so is that disappointing, or does that make you angry with yourself? You know, whatever emotions you're observing, you help put a word to it, so that the next time something happens and that feeling rises up in him, he can identify, oh yeah, mommy said that's sad. Or mommy says, oh yeah, I'm feeling angry. So that as we grow, we can use our emotional language rather than, and move toward the feeling and be comfortable with it and know there's safety in it, rather than getting overwhelmed. But unfortunately, for most of our generations, we didn't have that experience. And so when big things happen, the feelings become so overwhelming when we're children that all we can do is stuff them down, just stuff them as far down as we can get them, because we don't have the tools to not have those feelings be overwhelming, right? Because the tool would be mom or dad or a significant caregiver to help us find, identify the feeling, find the language, and then, and then be comfortable with it. But unfortunately, a lot of us don't come from those backgrounds. So we grew up as adults, and there's a lot of adults that have stuffed so many feelings for so long. And the only tool they have is to either stuff it, deny it, or minimize feelings, because they have to protect themselves from feeling so overwhelmed. And the thing about it is that as adults, cognitively, we know that we're capable of processing feelings, right? We're capable of feeling something and not having it overwhelm us. But our emotional part of us doesn't know that. And so the emotional part of us, it kind of gets stuck. And so this process helps us sort of like loosen up some of that stuff that's just been like germinating down there for so long. And then it begins to come up in a way that we can organize it. And that's a lot of what we're doing through this material, right? So I kind of just help you understand that ignoring your feelings is common. And but if we continue to ignore feelings about things, or not acknowledge our losses and feel the emotions connected to it, we just kind of stay stuck, right? And we never learn like how to move beyond it. And it always sort of has this influence, excuse me, this influence over us that it doesn't need to have. Now, as a Christian therapist, I take it one step further, and I can see how we get stuck, and then how we internalize negative messages and information that defines us differently than how God defines us, right? Like, it's almost like evil kind of takes that internalized false message, and then we become convinced that it could be true. Okay, I'll just use a really practical example from myself. So I'm blind in my right eye. I've never had vision in it, but I think supernaturally I have an ability I shouldn't have, right? I twirled the baton when I was young. I I did all these things that really I shouldn't be able to do. So I imagine depth, but I don't see depth, right? Because I don't have two eyes. So, but when I was little, I was in, when you started to read in second grade, third grade, I wasn't reading. And so I was falling behind, and I was identified as one of the special needs kids. And so I was pulled out of my classroom and I got some special services to help me learn how to read. Okay. I learned how to read. And in fact, once I got the assistance that I needed, I actually excelled. I actually jumped a few grades in terms of the expectation for reading. But in my mind, I told myself I wasn't smart because I didn't know how to read. So I stayed stuck in that thought process because at the time that was true. I couldn't read. I was limited, but I never moved past it. And even when I was in high school and I always got really good grades in college, I would always tell my mom, I don't understand why I'm doing so well because I'm not smart, and I really did not think that I was capable, like in terms of intelligence. And until I finally realized where that distorted thought started, which was way, way back in second, third grade. I had internalized a false thought, and I had carried it through with myself for all of my academic life, pretty much. Right? That's what I'm saying. I think sometimes evil takes that one thing and then creates a whole different narrative. And so as we process grief, we will begin to identify where some of those things where we kind of got stuck. Okay. And that happens on an emotional level too. Does that make sense? Yeah, Suzanne.
And I was going to,
Nancy, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've identified lately that this is a nuisance to me, and and I could just rough it through life, at this point, but I keep stumbling over all this in my past and can hardly talk to somebody without crying. So I just think, I'm going to have to deal with it.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, and again, if you can conceptualize it instead of I'm going to have to deal with it, right? There's that pull yourself up by the bootstraps mentality, right? It's, I get to deal with this now because that's going to give me parts of myself I've never been able to explore.
Like joy.
Yes. And it's okay for it to be scary, right? It's okay. But that's why I want to help reframe it for you, right? Because somewhere in your background, it's like, well, if I just force myself to do it, and then I'm gonna accomplish something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and you know what? I have no doubt you can force yourself to do anything you probably have to. Been there, done that your whole life, right? So let's use the motivating factor. Let's let it be like one of curiosity and joy in terms of, wow, this is going to be life-changing for me because I get to have parts of me that I've never had.
And
that's
pretty. I get to play.
Exactly. Yes. And there's freedom in that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yes. So, okay, you guys, any comments? I'm going to stop there because I think we're done, right? Is it 8:30? You guys out tracking?
I wanted to comment of what you said. I too had have a learning disability, but I didn't find out. Well, I knew I couldn't read very well, but I saw I had resources in elementary school. But once I left elementary school, I didn't receive services in middle nor high school, and so I finally received found out that I was dyslexic. I had dyslexia. but then, and that was my struggle in throughout school. I always struggled in, just recently when I was diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression. I thought that it was going to say that I was dyslexic as well, but it didn't show up on the test as if I was. I think it was just the trauma that occurred at the age of 4, uh, suppressed my learning, and I just would freeze up when given tests or anything. And so I still think I do have dyslexia, but I'm really think it was the anxiety
Yep.
from the traumatic event that occurred when I was 4,
Yep.
and that was never addressed. And so, because it was never addressed, unknown, it was just, covered and covered and covered until just recently. And so I definitely connect with you on that part.
Yes, absolutely. Right. You see how there was a different narrative like implanted, and that anxiety sort of defined what you thought you could do or not do, right? And in our bodies, we only have so much emotional energy to focus and to put to categorize in like we can't do it all. Our brains just can't do it all. And so we go into, like you said, that fight, flight, or freeze mode. And so you were fighting, but there's only so much energy that you can fight with. And if it's survival, then survival is going to take precedent over, being able to read the way maybe you could or should. Yeah.
So my coping mechanism was to shut down completely.
So you froze. Yeah.
And I'll just stay in that space, and I will stay in that space for days or weeks,
Mhm.
and maybe even months. And so
Mhm.
I became quiet in class,
Mhm.
didn't cause any trouble in class because I didn't want to be called to read or anything of that nature. So I sat by the good kid.
Mhm.
So I'll get noticed for positive things, and I was the helpful kid. So, oh, you don't have to do it. You're okay. Oh, you got it. No, I didn't have it.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yeah,
I
isn't
get
that
it.
amazing? Like how resourceful we are. Like it's
Mhm.
like, okay, well, there's a deficit here and I'm not getting it. So I'm gonna find something else that's gonna help me feel like I'm contributing, right? It's like
And
I'm a good kid, right?
but I also think I want to take it further. I think it's it's the parents' responsibility to notice something different about your child. Um, if we don't notice the behavior pattern or the out of character, um, our kids tell us that something is wrong. I think parents just don't like to dig into it. But as parents, you have to just to figure out what's wrong. I wish my parents had done that, but I knew they didn't have the capacity to do it. And so I don't blame them anymore for not giving me the help. They didn't have the capacity to do it, so it's not their fault, but it is their fault in
Mhm.
some way. And so, yeah.
Mhm. I'm glad you brought that up because as we do this work, it's natural to have other feelings related to our parents, especially if we're grieving the loss of, just say, a parent we wished we would have had, right? It's natural uh, to highlight some of those negative things and have angry feelings come up or resentments come up, and that's natural, and we want that. I mean, that's okay. It's just a feeling. It doesn't define us as being a good or a bad person. It just means that that's just part of our process, right? And so we're going to do some graphing and some other things that's going to help us kind of organize some of those feelings. But don't be afraid of those feelings. Don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. One of the things I want to talk about and I'll finish in just a minute here. I think I have like 5 minutes. Is that, as you know, most of us are Christians. I mean, in this venue, I think we're all believers. And you'll notice that I don't lean as heavily on God's ability to heal or scriptural references and things like that. And that's intentional, because in this format, it's really common to have questions about, you know, what's going on spiritually. God, why did you allow this to happen? Or if there are feelings directed toward even God, we want to welcome that, because he can handle that. And it's just still part of our process. Okay. So when I divorced my husband, I had a lot of like, what is up with this? You let me marry this man who betrayed me, like to the nth degree. And you gave me 5 kids with this guy. But I, all through junior high and high school, I had prayed for the right man to marry. So I felt betrayed by God, because I felt like he was leading me into this marriage. And so I needed to be able to struggle with that and to deal with my feelings spiritually about that. And he totally can handle that. And then, he is restored. He told me, I'll restore what the locusts have stolen, and I will send you a kinsman redeemer. Those 2 things. In the midst of huge struggle, he told me those 2 things. And he has proven that to be true now, 30 years later. So I just share that with you, because I want you guys to have this, a sense of authenticity about your process wherever it takes you. So don't be afraid of saying something that would appear to be like unchristian. That's not the point here. The point here is to let's get to the rootedness of what's going on with you and where your losses lie, where the distortions happened, and then grieve that so that we can complete it and move beyond it. And it's not unusual to have some spiritual attack in there, because, right, you know, the enemy really wants us to stay connected to the distortions and keep us stuck. So pray against that, like pray for protection and pray that God protects this process for you. I pray for that for you guys and for our other instructors, and, you know, in terms of SHBI and everything going on in other classes. So I think it's just really important to be aware, but to also be authentic in your own process. And it's okay to question, right? And that's why I share my own stuff with you, because hopefully that's a little bit of an example for you guys. And you go, yeah, that's right. Kathy said, like, you know, of course I'm going to feel betrayed. I prayed for 10 years for who to marry. And then, you know, I marry this idiot who, you know, betrayed me. Right. So it's, you know, sorry about that, but I mean, it's true. It's like, you know, what's up with that? So I'm very transparent, as you can see. And I want you guys to feel safe, and I want you to feel comfortable in this situation and in this setting. So my heart goes out to you guys, and I will be praying for you, and I will see you next week. Okay. Everybody good?
Thank you. It's
All
nice
right.
meeting you all.
Nice to meet you guys. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Maybe.